They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but what are those words? What's the worth of something that's carefully curated and filtered and posed? Well, I'll tell you, because I am a recovering pretend post addict. Last year I posted our most recent family photos and was met with many words of praise. Your children are so beautiful, you're so gorgeous, and the most gutting, you are perfect. No one could have known I was reading those comments with a pit in my throat, probably from my bed, the one that I refused to leave even for meals. It would be impossible to predict that behind closed doors, I had spent the better part of that last year fighting to save that very same perfect family. You see, a picture is only worth the story behind it, and no one knew mine. I was a friend and wife and mother and sister to the outside world. I dressed my kids well, showed up to play dates, and performed accordingly. I had a handsome, hardworking husband, a beautiful home, plentiful vacations. So people only saw what I projected, which was life tied up in a nice little bow. But here is what was really going on behind my white picket fence. Let's start with my husband. Sean is 34. He is a former athlete, the epitome of physical health, and he also has a failing heart. A few years ago, I found my husband flatlined on our bedroom floor. Unbeknownst to us, he has a really rare chronic heart condition, one that is not only going to require a transplant to continue living, but is also genetic, meaning both of our young children have a 50% chance of having it as well. No way to see that in a photo. And then there's my children, Campbell and Eli. They are beautiful, smart, fun, loving children who also have autism. No way to see that in a photo. And that leaves me. It hasn't just been a few years of hiding in plain sight, it's been my entire life. So here's my real self-portrait. I'm a child who was abused and a teenager who survived statutory rape. I was a young woman who had a professor who propositioned her, a stalker, and cancer, twice. I spent my early 20s jumping from relationship to relationship, loving everybody except myself. I had a boyfriend who died and a husband who almost did. I had 2 miscarriages, followed by 2 children with special needs. Anxiety and depression have cycled through my veins my entire life, right along with low self-esteem and body image disorder. Glamorous, huh? So that is the very colorful story I was sitting on the day someone called me perfect. Now, before I tell you how I responded to that comment, how that one word, perfect, would change my entire life, let's talk about the dangers of what I was doing, which is essentially pretend posting and hiding behind perfectionism. We all have a public versus private self, and that's okay. There are things that we choose to share with the outside world, and then there's the things we keep close. But the problem becomes when there's no overlap. When we start leading such a duplicitous life that we start saying or posting things we don't even feel or mean or believe. And while that might get you 1 million likes, I believe humans at their core desire much more. You see, I think we were created for connection. And one of the ways that we achieve that is through group camaraderie. That's probably why there's an obscene amount of attention out there right now to finding your tribe or finding your squad. But I think something interesting happens once we find our tribe or find our squad. And I also think it might explain why, as a society, we have never been more easily accessible to one another and yet never felt more alone. In the 19th century, French social psychologists Gabriel Tarde and Gustave Le Bon introduced this idea called the pack mentality. By definition, the pack mentality means that groups of individuals were formed and created for community. But once in that community, they can be greatly influenced by their peers to make decisions on a more emotional versus rational basis. And also to make decisions that would individually differ from what you would do as a group. For instance, if you're craving Chinese food, but the group is very vocal about ordering pizza, you keep your idea to yourself, and pepperoni it is. They swerve, so will I. It is an animalistic drive and instinct to fit in. And I can think of no greater, more popular pack than social media. It takes one scroll through Instagram's many influencers and reality stars to see the pack mentality out in full force. And it does not stop there. There's the teenagers who Facetune and the parents who only post their Pinterest-worthy moments. We don't get to see the toddler on the floor in the throes of a tantrum, or the couple who just verbally assaulted each other right before they post a kissing photo on their Caribbean vacation. Hashtag couples goals. You see, somewhere along the line, we started choosing our packs based on only the things we can see, which is often somebody's highlight reel and not their real life. And then, in order to stay a part of that pack, we follow suit. We say we're fine when we're not. We buy the same clothes and we comb our hair the same way. If your pack isn't talking about the real hard, gritty, tough stuff in life, then you mustn't either. While we might crave connection, we are conditioning ourselves to post our pretty and conceal our cracks. We are learning to stay silent and suffer instead of speaking and being seen. I know this holds true for me. During the thick of my hardships, I would spend my nights scrolling and numbing, and I have no idea why I did this because it only made me feel worse. I would see perfect families and perfect children and perfect bodies, and here I was spoon-feeding my spouse and learning my way around autism. And logically, I knew that I couldn't have been alone. The rate of autism is 1 in 54 children. The abuse and infertility and mental health statistics are staggering. But no one in my pack was talking about it, so I wasn't either. But I was releasing my truth somewhere. The day my daughter was diagnosed with autism, I opened an empty Instagram account. I used it as a journal. I didn't want friends or followers. My husband didn't even know about it. I just needed a space to share my gritty, while publicly I kept up my pretty. In fact, the very first post is this picture with me with dark circles under my eyes. We had come home from her appointment. I put my daughter down for a nap. I went to my room, put my head in a pillow, and screamed. Certainly couldn't have posted that. But I needed a space to release it. So for almost 2 years, I took to this empty Instagram. It is a real account of a woman grieving and then learning to live again. So when that comment came in on my public page, "You are perfect," something strange happened. Instead of filling me with admiration like it normally would have, I felt incredibly icky. Because unknowingly, I now had practice at being my truest self, if only to myself. I suddenly did not want a fake pack or to keep up the facade anymore. I wanted to be fully seen. So I did something really unorthodox and made my private journal public. I wanted to find one person who could relate, one person who could understand. And to my surprise, I found thousands. My story went viral, and now, professionally, every day, I get to speak and write my truth. But more than that, personally, I am free. Releasing my story did not bring judgment or pity. It brought me my people. It brought me women from over 150 different countries who all have come with a resounding message of me too. And while our experiences are not all the same, our feelings are universal. We all just want to know that we are not alone. So how do we do this? How do we be our realest, truest selves in a world that tells us to pretend? Well, I have some ideas. The first is that we have got to redefine the purpose of pain. Now, I am not a researcher or a scientist, but in a past life, I was a labor and delivery nurse, which means that I have stood witness to thousands of women's most beautiful and vulnerable moments. And while this might seem like the happiest place in healthcare, I can assure you that every single one of those women will tell you that there was immense pain before the birth of something beautiful. Now, I'm also a mom, and I am part of many Playdate groups, and I can tell you that a woman can talk about her birth story as easily as she can talk about her Starbucks order. That type of pain is acceptable in groups, in packs, in society, and online. In fact, if you've had complications leading up to your delivery or you had a natural childbirth, you earn more admiration. This is interesting, right? Why can that type of physical, excruciating pain be openly discussed and rewarded, but our other stories and scars cannot? And I think it has something to do with the fact that at the end of that mother's birth is a cute and cuddly baby. Her pain was deemed purposeful. But what if we applied that same mentality to all of our hardships? What if from all pain, from all things we keep hidden in a photo, came the birth of something beautiful? Somewhere along the line, we have socially distanced ourselves away from pain and buddied up with perfection. But we're getting it wrong. Perfection is not a perfume. It is not something we apply to make us sweeter and safer. It's actually acting as a repellent. It's keeping the connection out. You see, I thought my messy, painful moments were to be shamed away, but those were actually my connective tissue. Those were the things that brought me my people. But in order to do that, I not only had to redefine pain's purpose, I then had to risk exposure. So let's talk about this, right? Because there's a big difference between exposing yourself and oversharing. And we all have those friends on our feed who have like a side cramp or a bad hair day, and they take it to the internet. And it feels a lot like attention seeking, and rightfully so. Sometimes when your pain is abundant or fresh or new, it's not meant for the masses. But it's also not meant to shoulder alone. So here's my suggestion. When your pain is fresh and new and abundant, turn towards the one person in your life who feels the most right and the most real. Turn toward a therapist. If no one in your life fits that description, if your vulnerability is not received or reciprocated, find a virtual village. The power and beauty of the internet is there as a group for everything. So start searching for the people who can say, I get it, instead of, I can't imagine. My liberation was done in a really grand public online way, but it did not start out that way. I took to that private journal for almost 2 years. So if people feel too tricky, get a private journal, get a private Instagram. And then once you've written, once your wound has healed a little bit, and you're ready, share your story with as many ears as will listen. Because then you will deliver your purpose and your people. Nothing about my circumstances have changed. My husband still has a bad heart. My kids will always have autism. I will always be the girl with an alphabet soup of issues. But my perspective is different. So if there is a private image that you want to make public, do it. Share it on a page, share it on a stage, share it with one person or a million. It does not matter. The only thing that matters is that the real you has a safe place to land. We can be silent and suffer, or we can speak and be seen. And I promise you, when you share your story and your truth, the picture of your life will be worth way more than 1,000 words. Thank you.